Hey, what's going on? It's Michael Yo. Welcome to Comics on Canes, brought to you by DraftKings. We'll talk about that in a second. But a lot of things going on with our Miami Hurricanes, and I had to bring in the man, the myth, the legend, Gio Milian. What's up, bro? How are you?
What's up, Mike? Happy spring game week. We're only a few days away. Fun times ahead. I
Yeah,
know no official live broadcast for the spring game, but I'll be bringing a ton of updates.
I like it. So what's today? Wednesday. We are 3 days away. Before I get into we talk about the spring game, because of course we're going to talk about that. I want to talk about the defense first. And I hear the defensive linemen, they're very excited. They're happy about it. I want to show a picture that I think basically encapsulates the defensive line and how they're feeling. Akeem Mesidor, when he was asked about the defense, I've never seen him so happy to be in a defense where he's going to thrive. So I want to know the difference between Heatherman's defense and Guidry's defense, because of course last spring we didn't hear defensive linemen going, it's confusing, I don't really get it. They were kind of saying the same things they're saying now, but what's truly different between Guidry and Heatherman's defense from your experience and what you've seen?
Well, I can only say to a small extent from the media side of things. I can say from what's come out of the private sessions too. Not so much stunts in terms of pass rushing as well. I know a lot of people had complaints about that last year. A lot more head up, man on, one-on-one situations, kind of isolating guys in a per se island as a pass rusher. And, your technique either gets you by that guy or your first step or you're just burst off the line. That for the most part, I would say about the defense, but just overall, I would say they're just more responsible. And what I mean by that aspect is just the emphasis that they put on in terms of like the shift and alignment from the opposing offense that they key in on. They've been hyper focused on that throughout spring with their install of a defense. And then just even like we mentioned the last time we were on here, the motioning from the opposing offense, whether it's a guy motioning out of the backfield to the slot or a receiver running across one side of the field to the other, you don't see that confusion anymore. So I think that's just mostly it right there. But in regards to the defensive line, though, more one-on-one situations, less trickery in the essence of trying to have guys basically.
You mean you shouldn't have a defensive end try to hang out? I mean, try to guard a running back out the backfield? Is that what you're saying?
Well, yes and no, because you see it in the NFL, but it has more so to do with it's the strength of your personnel. Like, for example, I know exactly what you're saying. Like having Akeem Mesidor dropping back or trying to cover the flats on a running back, that's not very ideal. You would like to see your guys like Marquise Lightfoot or your Malik Bryants of the world that, they're not as big and as stocky as your Reuben Baines and Akeem Mesidors, but they have some of that capability to do that. We didn't see that last year. We saw everyone remembers the one against Syracuse where Akeem Mesidor was asked to drop back into the flats, and you're just like, okay, why are we using a 6'3", 275, 280-pound defensive end to drop back into coverage?
I get a defensive end dropping back, straight back to get in the lane of a quick slant. That makes sense to me because that's trickery. You're trying to fool the quarterback really quick. But when you're putting a person on an island with a running back, that's bad. The biggest complaint we had last year, and I remember me and you talked about it all the time, our front can beat your front because we have better athletes. Why are we stunning out of position? And I felt that was the big narrative that the fans have. It's like, we're supposed to have better athletes. Why are we playing all these games? Let's just get after them and beat them. Man to man, me against you, let's beat them. And that was so frustrating. But I'm seeing players this year say they've never had more freedom. And I guess the freedom they mean is just attacking, doing what they normally do. What they're trained assassins. Let's go get it type of thing.
Yeah, more so just instinctual, fundamental football rather than constantly thinking or overthinking situations, which causes players to have hiccups or even play slower.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Let's talk about some standouts on the defensive side. I was listening to Brockemeyer. He mentioned a few players. I mean, it's the normal ones we've already mentioned, the younger Justin Scott, Blunt. I mean, are you hearing what about those two that are standing out? And are there any others like Dante Simpson, right, is standing out as well?
Yes. So I mentioned since last season, because I had the chance just taking photography on the sidelines, seeing these players up close. And sometimes some things you can't see on the broadcast. My biggest takeaway with Armando Blunt last year, even though he didn't play a whole bunch of snaps, he still got in some games. Violent hands. That's the biggest thing with him. Violent hands. It's definitely when he gets his hands on you, you're in trouble, pretty much. Run game and pass rush as well. In terms of the other guy you mentioned, Justin Scott, just overall physicality now, much bigger than he was last year. Still in great shape, though. It's not like he put on sloppy weight or anything of that sort. Dante Simpson, ahead of the curve for where he should be right now, most definitely. I'm just talking about just physicality standpoint, how well he stands up against the run game as well on the interior line. People don't realize this, but he technically could have been a class of 2026 recruit. He was on the younger end for his recruiting class. It's about 16, will be 17 by the time the season comes around. So
that's insane.
And I just think it's crazy how ahead he is right now compared to some of the recent guys they've brought into the program in the past couple of years. Like you look back at like Justin Scott last year, or even Artavius Jones, who came in last year, or 2 years prior, Joshua Horton, Dalen Russell, Dante Simpson. I would say he's shown similar flashes, kind of to like what Justin Scott did last year.
And Justin Scott was a 5-star and Dante was a 3-star coming in.
Yes.
What do you think? Look, football players in high school get better every single year. We know that. And we know a lot of players are overlooked because they play for smaller schools. But just the advancement in a couple of years, what do you think that's going on in high school that some players are just so far advanced? Because is there a point, and I always wonder this, if you're leaving early, in what way does it hurt you? Like, because this guy's supposed to be playing high school football, right? How does it hurt you? Or maybe it doesn't, because I can understand both sides. It's like one side is like you're getting into a program earlier, so you'll be stronger. But then again, you're getting into a program a year earlier where one more year of high school, you could have been a little bit stronger, and you're going to have your years where you're growing even more. You'll be in college. I mean, what's your take on that?
Well, I put it towards two sides of the coin. There's some programs like your IMG academies of the world that do a phenomenal job of preparing these kids from the high school, the prep era that they're in up until college. I think they do a great job in terms of like the physicality and just getting guys weighed up and just the way you would really want it to look. For example, you go back to Francis Malagnoa compared to other offensive linemen that came out of his class. You saw the difference just physically as well.
Yeah.
But then you have other high school programs where the emphasis is not like, obviously they do get in the weight room and whatnot, but the emphasis is not like as large as a IMG Academy, that they have these kids on a strict schedule and routine and diet and everything. That's why a lot of these kids go and transfer to IMG Academy to kind of get that experience like right before college. But what you have on the other end of the spectrum, like I mentioned, with the other high schools that may not be as entrenched in that, like the nutrition and strength and conditioning, getting in the weight room and putting on size, a lot of these kids, they're just eating like fast food, McDonald's. And I know this from actual experience, talking to these kids and talking to some of the 7-on-7 coaches and even the high school coaches, that it's kind of like this when they're in high school. So some people say like, oh man, this player is really skinny or whatever. And then they get in a college weight program, and like in 6-7 months, they've packed on like 20 pounds. And you're like, whoa, like who is this kid? Like I'll give an example of that. Dylan Day last year, like before he arrived compared to like when the season arrived last year, was like two totally different players just physically. So
wow.
I do think Miami's doing a good job in terms of the strength and conditioning. Dante Simpson, he definitely put on some size from when he left Chaminade to when he got here, and then just spring training and whatnot. I just think mostly what I see is that guys are progressively putting on size, and it's not like just this rapid thing every time with like 15, 20 guys that all of a sudden you see those 15, 20 guys gain 20, 30 pounds in a year. No, some of it is a little progressive. Like, for example, Marquise Lightfoot, he's put on some size. Maybe not as much people would really like him to, but he has put on size. Or Cameron Bobby Pruitt as well. He's put on some considerable size since last year. May not be the ideal weight yet at linebacker, but he's getting there. And really, anyone that has lifted weights in their life, this, that you don't necessarily want to see this massive boom because you kind of sort of have like a regression. It's progressively just.
Well, I was even listening to Ruben Bain when he's trying to lean up for this year. He said he had to stop going home and eating home cooked meals. So even when you're a veteran and had a great freshman year and your sophomore, and I don't even call it sophomore slump because I think it was just the defense couldn't get to the quarterback because the defensive backs didn't play well enough. I think they would have if they gave him a second longer. But Ruben Bain even had to cut back on some food. And Hayden Low, this is what interesting with Akeem Messidor, and I don't know if you caught this, but when he was talking about Hayden Low, he says the dude's a little bit off, which was funny to me. It's like almost like this guy's kind of crazy. Like this dude, he like kind of psycho out there, which is not a bad thing when you're on the field. But how would you describe it seeing him in person? Is he just loud? Does he what? How would you describe him on the field?
I would say just like from what I've seen, he's not like a rah-rah guy from what I've noticed. But sometimes with football, like you have these guys like, for example, your Ed Reeds or your Dan Morgans, guys that were very just calm and smooth and collected off the field. But then when they got on the field, they were absolute psychopaths. I would say that that's a great example for a guy like Hayden Low that, you speak to the kid, you wouldn't think that he's like that or whatever, but some guys, it's just a flick of a switch and they're just a completely different person on the field. And that's great. You want that. You want students of the game when they're off the field, but then when they're on it, like just the aggression, the passion, the instinct, I think that would be a great example or comparison to it. Now, you also have your cases of looks like Tarzan, plays like Jay and 2. There's been guys like that have
yeah,
the football program that they look like they were built like a Greek god, and then when it comes to game day, you're like, man, like what's going on here? But he's not that case though. He's very physical, violent, and fast.
All right, I got to give this shout out to DraftKings real quick, and I want to come back and we're going to talk about Shady McCoy. Shady McCoy talking some trash about Cam Ward, but DraftKings are brand new. I've teamed up with them on the podcast, Comics on Canes. Now, this is very cool. NBA playoffs are right around the corner. Playoffs, play-ins. If you love watching basketball like me, you can check them out. Now, here's the deal. Bet $5, get $200 in bonus bets instantly. And all you got to do is use the code word YOBET. That's YOBET. It's not my bet. It's YOBET. Make sure you download that DraftKings Sportsbook app and get to it. DraftKings, I just want to say thank you so much for being a sponsor of the Comics on Canes podcast. And for you people watching right now, just make a bet. Use my code word, YOBET. It would do huge things for this podcast. All right, let's talk about Shady McCoy. Basically, the dumbest take you could say in college football so far. And I saw your tweet about it. Just because your tweet, and I'm paraphrasing, basically, just because you played football doesn't mean you're an expert or an analyst. And this guy said that he doesn't believe Cam Ward can make it in the NFL because he's never seen a 0-star be a successful quarterback in the NFL. And my rebuttal to that is, well, you saw a 0-star put up numbers that are absolutely insane and be a finalist for the Heisman. So why can't you see this guy being successful in the NFL? What was your take on that, Gio?
Well, first and foremost, I'll get to the point where I said that some guys are just being hired just because they were great athletes rather than merit, experience, or even talent. I do think there's a certain talent to it when you speak on sports, or just from an analytical perspective as well. And you
Yes,
kind of have
100%.
to understand and know what you're saying, but also put it all together and wrapped nice and neatly. But to his point that he was saying that, oh, that 0 stars, I've never seen a guy like that. I got some great examples. Josh Allen, who played for Wyoming, was not a very highly recruited guy. Khalil Mack, who played for Buffalo, came out of the Fort Pierce area here in the state of Florida, was not a very highly recruited guy. I think he actually didn't even have any stars next to his name. He became a defensive player of the year in the NFL. So this thing that, oh, like I've never seen a 0-star guy or whatever, like at quarterback or this and that. Hello, Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes was not a big-time high school recruit either. And I think what matters too is the context as well. I always mention this, that context matters so much, because you can't just go out there and say, oh, I've never seen a 0-star. No, you got to do some research. You have to do some research before you say certain things. And my thing is, clearly the research wasn't done, because it was just like, oh, I'm not sold on him because, because he wasn't ranked in high school. That's ridiculous and preposterous, because number one of the biggest reasons why Cam Ward was not ranked, or even really ranked highly at all coming out of high school, was because of the offense that he played in high school. He didn't really get to showcase what his talent was. And also,
he played in a wing T, right?
Yes, a wing T offense. So, and also my last point to it is what happens sometimes when these guys get in college programs, and this goes to the point we were talking about strength and conditioning earlier too.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't really know how some of these guys are going to react to that change of the nutrition and getting in the weight room and a routine and a schedule and everything, because it transforms your body over time. Guys will get stronger, quicker, faster. We've seen it many, many, many times. I think what happens is recruiting rankings are not an exact science. And I say this because I used to work in the recruiting industry some years ago, that I know it for a fact that it's not. Sometimes it's just, you see this guy in high school, oh yeah, he's really fast or whatever, but you can't measure what his heart is, or how he is in the film room, or how much extra time he's putting in aside from the required stuff, because coaches, they won't tell you, but if they know that you're doing the extra stuff, they love that. It's not required, but technically behind doors, it really is required. They want to see guys doing that because they like that little extra effort. So basically that, and then I'll touch the subject lightly on about guys just getting hired because they're great athletes. I think there's phenomenal athletes that have played this sport that are tremendous from an analytical perspective. Like I could point to Greg Olson and Tony Romo, Jimmy Johnson, and even like, let's turn it even to like the NBA side of things. Kenny Smith, he wasn't like a big time superstar basketball player, but a great basketball mind.
Mark Jackson.
Mark Jackson.
Yeah.
Ernie Johnson. So because I saw mostly everyone agreed with me with what I said, but there was one person that said, oh, well, the athletes know more than the average fan. No, I'm going to be very honest with you. You'd be surprised. There are some fans that really know and understand things from an analytical perspective. And a lot of it has to do with this day and age that we are in now with technology, that the access we have to things compared to like the 90s or early 2000s. Like you could pull up tape review of anything, or just, it's so much more accessible now. So I think that's an insult to the average fans that, oh, they don't know
100%. I agree. And here's the thing that's interesting to me, and you see it all the time. We hyper focus on the Miami Hurricanes football team, but recruiting is almost like a college game day to me. All those guys on that desk, they can't know about every single program in the country they're talking about, because they could say they watched taped on everybody, but they didn't. They didn't. That's why most of them, that's why every show you listen to just regurgitates a narrative about Miami or any other school they're talking about, because that's all they know. But
Mike,
like,
well, I'll tell you this.
Yeah.
I'll tell you this because I've worked in the corporate side of the news sector when it comes to sports in general. And this is just a little insider. I'm sure you know this yourself too with some of your
Yeah.
background. What happens is they'll give you cliff notes when you work on the corporate side, because it's very hard to cover a very broad spectrum all at once. And then you absolutely know and master every little thing. It's very, very difficult to do that. And honestly,
100%.
no one can really do that.
There's not
A
enough hours in the day to
shame
watch
on
all
Shady
that.
McCoy, though.
Go ahead. You cut out. Go ahead.
Shame on Shady McCoy, though. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. It was terrible. Terrible take. Terrible effort with it, too. Like, you can't really sell anyone on that. Like, how many guys have we seen go into the NFL that were lowly rated recruits, or guys like your underdog stories? Or it's just ridiculous and preposterous just saying, oh, because he was a no ranked star guy out of high school, he's not going to make it in the NFL. So we're just going to completely go past what he did in college, right? We're just going to only look at what he did in high school. I'll tell you this, NFL GMs and executives, they don't give a damn what you did in high school, because guys like Erman Lane, who played out of Homestead, was a 5-star receiver, one of the top 3 guys at his position years ago. I'm sure Miami Hurricane fans will know exactly what I'm talking about. Would have been a massive draft pick if everyone went off of what he did in high school.
Well, that's the whole thing. And when we saw Cam Ward perform at the combine, where other people were questioning him, and then it came out to some people saying it was one of the greatest pro days they've seen from a quarterback, we already knew that. These are because we're in it every single day. And that was my point about whether it's 5-star, 4-star, 3-star. Like, it's kind of like analysts. There's no way they can know about every team. And there's no way these recruitment services can know about every single player. So speaking about recruiting, I want to jump into some names real quick. Where are we staying with Jackson Cantwell? Of course, the number 1 person on the board. Every team in the country would love to have this guy on their line. Where are we still in the mix? Are we looking good? Are we trending up? Where are we at?
Miami's very much in the mix there. There is some confidence on there, and silent confidence, I would say, that they feel they're very much in the thick of it. Oregon is a team I've mentioned to really watch out for there with that recruitment. Michigan being the other one as well that I believe is not being talked about enough, and some things I've recently learned about his recruitment. But I know everyone brings up about Cantwell's connection to Miami in terms of his representation, Rosenhaus. There's more connections than that, just that, to Miami. There is someone within the administration level coaching at Miami that has connections dating back to his parents' Olympian days.
Wow, really? Okay. And how much do you think that, like, I get the agent thing, but I don't know how much an agent matters to where you go. You know, because they're just going to kind of support whatever you do because they work for you.
Yes and no, because what happened? Well, these are 2 separate, different things, because like transfer portal and high school recruiting is a little different. But like in terms of like the transfer portal, like you see all these coaches complaining about the tampering now and everything. The tampering is not like happening between coaches and players. Like, players are going through their agents the very same way that head coaches do during the regular season. Like, hey, tell this team I'm interested, or tell that team I'm interested. That's how these coaches jump from one job to the next. And that's what's happening with these players. And now the coaches are getting upset that, oh, there's tampering and this and that. And it's very difficult to prove tampering at this day and age now. And, well, the other thing too is, let's be honest here, Mike, every school is doing it. But back to the point, though, about what you mentioned about agents and the influence. I think from a transfer portal perspective, yes, there's a very big influence there. Now, from a high school perspective, I don't know many guys, at least from the high school ranks, that have representation like right away, especially at least South Florida guys.
Yeah.
There's certain laws that we had down here and whatnot. I know some guys on the West Coast have had. I don't think necessarily it influences like where they go. I think it'll more so influence like, like their market, basically, like kind of driving up the price pretty much.
Yeah, I was like, the advantage to Rosenhaus in Miami, he probably already has deals in place in because he's so familiar with the market. He's done other players in the market. So that's an advantage for Miami. But Jackson Cantwell is such a big name in sports. I get our market is better, but he's going to be able to get his money no matter where he goes. So that's the thing. Any other recruits we're missing out on that we should be like, that's kind of under the radar that Miami really wants and would love to have that we're not talking about.
There's one guy plays on the same 7-on-7 team with the cornerback that they just flipped from the state of Georgia, and John Tavius Wyman, his 7-on-7 teammate Blake Stewart out of Woodward Academy out of the state of Georgia. He's someone I would keep an eye on throughout this week. He'll be arriving tomorrow. He'll be spending time for the spring game as well. Things are trending really well there and quickly. Wouldn't be surprised if we could potentially see a commitment this weekend, potentially being him. I know some people are always very interested in like, what are my thoughts about Derek Cooper, the 5-star running back? I really like Miami, even more than ever, based on some feedback that I got last week, just about his recruitment overall and just the aspect and relationship that is there between Miami and his family and himself. Couple other names I could throw out there. I like where Miami's at with Ashari Charles out of Venice, Florida, 4-star defensive end. Miami's done a really good job recruiting there with him. And another under the radar guy that'll be visiting this weekend, Freddie Wilson, 4-star defensive tackle out of Spruce Creek, Florida. If that high school sounds familiar, Miami was recruiting one of his teammates last year in Derry Norris, who ended up signing with Georgia Tech. But I know Miami likes Wilson. They're going to get him on campus for quite a bit, and we'll see what comes out of it. But he is an under-the-radar guy that they really like and is trending towards Miami's way.
Now, John Tavius, the guy that flipped from Georgia to Miami, question, because, this is always in the back of my mind, but it's never really talked about with the pundits on Miami side. Did Georgia really want this guy, or did Georgia kind of stop recruiting him? Because, that's the first thing I think,
Georgia wanted him.
Okay, great. That's good to know.
Miami just did a really good job of recruiting him. Like you see all the memes and stuff on X from the DB coaches like Will Harris and Zach Etheridge and Terry Jefferson, like with the bad boys memes and whatnot.
Yes.
Those guys are a problem on the recruiting trail. And
you know what? I'm glad you brought that up. It's freaking amazing to me how quickly Zach Etheridge and Will Harris has turned around DBs wanting to come to Miami, where we've been sitting for 20 years, and really you would get one here, one there. But we always said on this podcast, we should never not have DBs that are fast on Miami. What is it about these two guys? Literally in 4 months, they've changed the whole complexion of Miami and the DB room. What is it about these two that people love, the DBs love about them, where we lacked in the last 20 years?
Well, number one, they like to recruit. Number two, kids that can actually relate to them. I know some people will compare it to like DVD when he was here, and now he's at USF. Yep. These guys have more experience under their belt compared to what DVD had. So obviously that helps too. There's a track record of these guys developing players, actual NFL players too. And Will Harris is like highly regarded just in terms of like the recruiting world and just development aspect of these players. He's very, very highly respected. So I will say this. I mentioned this as a comment to someone, just like a passerby comment when someone was talking about it last week. I said, defensive back recruiting for Miami, it's the best it has been since pre-Randy Shannon era. It's been a long time. And actually, they'll have one of the top 3 cornerbacks in the nation on campus for the spring game this weekend. And he's also Miami legacy too, so that definitely doesn't hurt.
It's almost to the point where now I'm worried they recruit so well. It's like, I'm scared we're going to get some no's now because they're getting everybody they want pretty much. That's what's crazy about the room. They're stacking so much talent so fast. It's almost like I feel bad on two sides of it. Soon when they get bigger players, they're going to have to kind of let some of the players they recruited go. But then they're stacking the room so fast. You're like excited as a fan,
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that I've noticed too, they have very strong belief in their evaluations too.
Good.
Like even down to like Camden Portis, which is Clinton Portis' son. They didn't just take him just because he's Clinton Portis' son. People don't realize this, but Camden has a twin brother. And like Miami hasn't taken him like as a recruit or whatnot. They took him because they felt really strong in their evaluation of him. Like, hey, like he could actually really play here. And he's continued to shoot up through the rankings.
I love it. And the last thing I'm going to touch on before I let you go, Carson Beck. I don't know why in the back of my mind, I got to ask your opinion. I know they say he's going to be okay, but for some reason, something just in the back of my mind is like, will he be there at the beginning of the year? How confident are you that he will be, percentage-wise, taking the snap the first game against Notre Dame?
He'll play game 1.
Okay. You're pretty confident about that.
Very confident on that.
Okay.
You don't invest that amount of money for that guy to sit in rehab and then not be ready for game 1.
How big of a deal, since they'll have all spring to throw, right? I mean, all summer to throw. How big of a deal is it? Is it fans making a big deal that he didn't throw in spring? Because they're going to still be running the same routes and the same, like making a connection in the summer. Are we as fans making this a big deal that he's not in spring ball? Or do you really feel it's a big deal he's not in spring ball? Because they'll have all summer to work this out.
I don't think it's that big of a deal. I've spoken to some of the guys that have played within this program for championship teams, All-American guys, all-conference guys that have come through this program. I've asked them all this question. Even Amon, my co-host on Who Wants Smoke, I've asked him too. And they've all come to the conclusion, like, yeah, spring is more so like the install and whatnot. But if you're a veteran guy, and Carson's been in college for, I think, like 4 or 5 years now. I think he's going on his 5th year now. If you've been in college that long, you don't necessarily per se need spring to like just be practicing and whatnot. Obviously, it would be great to get those reps in or whatever, but he's going to have time even after the spring from like between next Saturday to all the way to like the first week of August. He's going to have time to throw those guys and everything like between all that, even though like not official practices. This is what great quarterbacks do, that they get their guys together during the times that you're not on official practice times and you're working on timing and routes and the concepts and everything. I think everything will fall into place. But I will say, though, I have a very strong opinion on this. I think Miami should strongly consider going into the transfer portal to try to land some insurance behind him, because I do think we see one of the quarterbacks ending up transferring after the spring, and you can't have that room thin. And although Luke Nichols had a nice couple practices this past week, you still got to strengthen that room. You still got to strengthen that room this year, especially with what you're trying to do.
And I know Miami's doing everything to keep Emory Williams, but the competitive side of Emory, you got to leave. But I'm sure Miami wouldn't mind throwing a little cash as an insurance policy to keep him. So I'm sure he's being pulled in both ways, and we'll see how it plays out. Give a shout out, Up in Smoke, or what's the name of the podcast again?
Who Wants Smoke?
Who Wants Smoke? Where can people check it out?
You can find us on YouTube at Who Wants Smoke _Inc. Or also on X, right on my X account at GeoMillion. Every time it goes live, it pops up on there with a live video feed. We had over, I think it was like over 10,000 viewers last time we went live on Sunday. I know people really loved that show. We talked about the scrimmage, Amon's thoughts, my thoughts, everything just going to the spring game. So, yeah.
That's awesome, man. I'm glad you're doing your thing. You got the Discord too, right?
Yeah. Actually, if anyone listening to this, if you want some great info that I would say about 90 to 95% of the time comes way ahead of when news actually drops, like commitments or just certain things going on with the program and whatnot, you can find that on my X account. There's a link right there by the bio that says Discord. You press on there, it'll take you to the Discord. We got over 1,000 people inside there.
That's awesome.
You subscribe to premium and everything. You get a whole bunch of nuggets and stuff.
That's awesome, bro. Well, I'm so happy for you, man. Thank you so much for hanging out once again. I really appreciate you, man.
Thank you, Mike.
All right. And we'll see you next time. Make sure you hit that like, subscribe button. Big shout outs to DraftKings for being a sponsor of the show. And we'll see you next time. Later.